since today is the 25th of May 2020, which marks the African Union Day, also known as the African Day, the Ghana chapter intended to organize a webinar to commemorate this particular day, since it's a historic day as far as Africa is concerned. So the first topic which we intend to present is Africa Day, the way forward. Africa Day, the way forward. As we are already aware, the Organization of African Unity was formed in the year of 1963, 25th May in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, after the 32 head of states converged under the hostage of His Excellency and His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie. The Organization of African Unity was formed based on two main objectives. One is to coordinate and intensify the cooperation of African states in order to achieve prosperity for the African people, and also two, to defend the territorial sovereignty of the independent African states. As we recall, during the late 1950s and early 1960s were the time most African countries were attaining their independence from their colonial rule. So this period was for most African states to attain independence. So the OAU thought it wise to bring a policy or bring an aim after its formation to protect the integrity and sovereignty of these newly formed independent African countries. Now, the question that we must ask ourselves is, has the OAU, now African Union, achieved its aims and objectives since its formation? I think we all know the answer. The answer is relatively no. And the question that we must ask ourselves after this abrupt answer is, why has the AU failed to achieve its objectives? One, I think the AU and its leaders, and also by far the African people, are largely divided, are largely disunited, which has affected the achievement of the aims of the African Union. We are all aware of the civil wars and also the selfishness on the part of the African leaders, which has angered the majority of the youth, hence having an apathy for the African Union. Also, I think that most of the leaders or members of the African Union have colonial mindsets, and they have Eurocentric ideas, which most often turn down the purposeful and also the usefulness of good objectives and good policies of the AU. Number three, also, I think that the AU thinks the achievement of their aims and objectives is complex and something unrealistic, which has also affected their attainment of their aims. Now, what can we do to help the AU achieve its aims? That is the way forward of the African Union. Now, when we talk about African unity or Africa must unite, I think the AU and also most African youth tend to confuse it with the idea that Africa must be one country with one head of state and also with one governance structure. No. All what we are talking about concerning African Union is to have one common trade policy, which I think the African Free Trade Policy or Free Trade Area Agreement is a good thing which the AU has implemented, of course, which my colleague will talk more about it later. And also, when we talk about African unity, we are talking about situation whereby there will be free entry and no restrictions of movement of persons and goods and services across African countries. Also, we want the African Union to have a policy whereby all African countries will have a single passport, which will be used as a single identity when one decides to travel outside Africa. Also, we are trying to achieve situation whereby there will be a single currency. I think for yesterday we had we saw a news that the francophone countries have changed their currency from the CFA francs to ECO. On the surface, a good policy, but as well as we also know, beneath it, there are some issues which are yet to be addressed. Also, we are talking about one central bank as a way forward for the African Union. The African Union must have one central bank which will decide the monetary policies for all African states, which will print currencies for all African states. Also, lastly, I will talk about having one trade policy for all African countries, which countries will use it in terms of trade agreements for foreign countries, foreign cooperation such as the European Union, the South American cooperation, etc. So what can we do again aside this particular ideas? I think the area which we must also focus more is education. Education. Just last 2 days ago, we had a meeting with Professor Lumumba, and also he suggested that a book called Miseducation of the Negro must be read widely by the African youth. I think it's a good book which I recommend for all of us to read. Most of the African youth are ignorant of the history of Africa and also are ignorant of the purposive and calculated and conscious agenda of the imperialists and new colonialists to tarnish the image of Africa. Most youth sees the Europe and America as the land of excellence and see as a country ripping with diseases, corruption. All the bad images are sent or attributed to Africa by this imperialist. I think we must start to educate the youth, we must start to educate the young ones that Africa is beautiful. We must patronize African goods. We must begin to have some kind of love for our own people. We must be united. We must have a sense of oneness. I think this is what Pan-Africanism is all about. Sense of oneness, a sense of togetherness, a sense of unity. Having love for one another is a way forward for the African Union going forward. And also, I think the Agenda 2063 of the African Union must be highlighted in equal heights as the SDGs. The African Union, somewhere in 2014, 2015, implemented the Agenda 2063 with 10-year development plan. But most of us, or most of the African youth, are ignorant of this nice policy, nice idea of the African Union Agenda 2063 framework. So I think going forward, the AU must publicize the 2063 agenda across all countries, across all newsletters, and also to make it easily accessible for students, for African youth leaders, for everybody in Africa. Translation in other languages also is very, very important, so that Africa people will have a genuine idea on their Agenda 2063, which I think is a good policy. Also, I think the conscious or unconscious betrayal of African leaders who are bold to stand for their country and by large Africa is something which the AU must also consider going forward. We all saw what happens to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and also to Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, when the Zimbabweans decided to take over their land from the Western people, from the whites. The USA and their allies tried to impose sanctions on Zimbabwe, which crippled the Zimbabwean economy. But what we saw was that most African leaders were indifferent. They were having some indifferent kind of attitude. They didn't care about what was happening in Zimbabwe. So going forward, I think we must protect ourselves. We must have the courage to protect our own and also to support African leaders who are being directly targeted by imperialists and also by foreign leaders. Also, one important thing we must do going forward is to control our own media. We must control our own media. The African Union must establish a media house which cut across all African countries, which will be known for publicizing or broadcasting African affairs, things that concern Africa, to project the good image of Africa. We shouldn't wait BBC and Al Jazeera and CNN to broadcast or display the bad side of Africa, whereby we will see people ripping with hunger, poverty, diseases, dirtiness, sanitation issue. No, we should have a common media house which will broadcast the positive image of Africa. Since we all know that, also, yeah, the Americans and Europeans have areas which are poverty ridden, but they will never show it or broadcast it on their television. So we here in Africa think that the Europeans and American countries are center of excellence. They are the cleanest city. In short, everything good are in America, we know, which is not the case, because we have tend to neglect our own things, our own positive aspects, because we don't control our media. We must have a common media going forward. And also, the last thing I'll talk about going forward is the issue about loans, borrowing, and also unnecessary credit facilities which are being requested or which are being entered into agreement by African leaders, as now with China, previously with USA, Britain, France, Italy. The basic rule of borrowing is you borrow for what you don't have. You borrow for what you can pay for. You don't borrow for what you can pay for. Why do we allow ourselves to be coerced, to be influenced by Chinese loans and Chinese credit facilities, which more or less cripple our economies, which more or less is impossible to pay in the long run? Hence, the Chinese will sophisticate or confiscate your assets. I think development or growth is something that we must not construe with as a competition. We are not competing with anybody. Going forward, Africa must have this idea that development is personal, development is contextual. We must focus on ourselves. We must focus on our own strides. We must move on our own pace. We shouldn't compete unrealistically, unfavorably with other countries because we think that they are developed. I think these are some of the reasons which necessitate the countries to go in for favorable loans and other credit facilities from China and also other European countries as well as America. Now, as Prof said some time ago, I think some weeks ago, he said IMF and World Bank will not help your economy. They only give you conditions which will further lead to the suffering of your people. We must engage in necessary borrowing, not unnecessary borrowing. We must engage in proper credit facilities which will have favorable agreements with our own countries. I think these are some of the things I would like to talk about going forward as we celebrate the African Day, today being 25th of May 2020. Thank you very much, comrades.
Thank you very much, our able chair and country
Thank you.
director, Razak, for this powerful and insightful spirit of Africanism. We really appreciate you for all that you're doing. So I think we can open the floor. If anyone has submission, it is an open discussion. If anyone has submission, an add-on, a question, please let's engage our country director and share the knowledge.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, the floor is open.
Yeah. My battery is just 3%, so I want to make a quick
Yes,
contribution. Then
please. Yes, please.
I might. When you look at how African leaders have positioned themselves, I think they are bringing the problems to the youth of today. Let's come to think of the leaders we have as president. When you when you look at the age range of this our old men, in quotes, old men leading us as country, you could see clearly that they don't have anything, let me say, positive for the youth. They don't look at back whether their generation, whatever their generation will come and be. So they make decisions that will help them or that will favor them at a go. I hope you are getting it. So when you take some countries, the decision the leaders make there will not be in favor of the youth. No matter the agitations the youth will make, it will still not hold because one, the youth front too is divided based on political parties. I belong to party A, I belong to party B. So whatever decision my party or my leaders make, that is it. Let's go by it. After all, they are the leaders. They know what is best. But no, we shouldn't always see things to be like our leaders are all knowledgeable of decision making. The youth must rise, come together, bring ideas on board. Whenever, like the way we are talking about IMF or this, we have resources in our African soils. Why don't we make use? Why don't we utilize it to our own benefit rather than liaising with the white, the Americans, the Asians, the Chinese? They are destroying the properties of Africa. They are destroying the future of Africans. Let's stand up as youths, come together, bring out a good or a concrete proposal, present it to the AU. I think with this, they can look at it and further on, we'll move on as an African. Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Thank you
that
very much.
submission. Anyone would want to also have their say before we move on to the next session?
Just to add up to what I think Michael Fiano said.
Yes.
Yes, just yesterday I was having a chat with one of the country leaders of the foundation. He said we have more than 200 Pan-African movements in Africa, and what they do is to talk, also to incite the minds of fellow African youth. So I believe going forward we can start to combine various movements so that we can move on from the talking to action, because we believe that when we have the masses, then we can have effective action. And so he said the youth are divided along party lines. Yes, I think if you compare the situation in Ghana carefully, it's a purposeful attempt by the various political leaders to divide the youth along their lines, so that when there is any benefit, when there is any kind of help, those who are inclined to their side will have it more than those who are not inclined to their side. So I think going forward, we must also have the sense of sacrifice. We must, because coming together, having a sense of unity, coming together, you must also have some kind of sacrificial attitude. Because if you can sacrifice now, then I think you can also have the idea to, or the sense to gain when our unity yield results. Yes, that's what I would say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our country ahead for that. Yes, Madam Monica, the floor is open.
Thank you. I don't know what is next on the agenda. I don't know what I have to see if I should say it now. Um, maybe can you kindly walk me through the agenda, please?
Yes, today we are talking about the African Day and what it means for the youth of Africa. Do they know what they are supposed to do? What does the African Union actually mean to the youth? And also with the implementation of the African free trade, do the youth know even the basics of the free trade? Are people aware of the free trade, or we are just rallying around singing, yay, one single market? What does it mean for us? So that is the agenda of today that we are all sharing in the discussion. So any thoughts, ideas, submissions you have on either the African Day or the African free trade, the floor is open for you to also make your submission and we discuss about it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, the host, John, and Comrade Razak. Thank you for putting this together. It was so thoughtful of you. Maybe on all that is going on, I'll start commenting on the free trade. Um, for example, I'm not so covered with what is going on with ECOWAS, but I'll give examples with EFC, the East African Community, where we have all these protocols in place, for example, that are encouraging free trade, free movement of people. Uh, so far, we have just succeeded at having one passport as a region. Starting from February this year, we got East African passport, which is a well done to the community. We don't pay visas around in East Africa. But then there's a protocol, it's called East African Common Market Protocol. That is it's supposed to facilitate free movement of goods amongst East African countries, which has literally remained on papers. Like you still have to pay tariffs all through the border posts. Or, for example, if you're from Tanzania, you're coming to Uganda, means most definitely you must go through Kenya. That's if you're using the northern, you go through northern Tanzania or eastern Tanzania. That's why you would connect direct to Uganda. But now it means if you're using the northern part of Tanzania, you go through Kenya, you go through Uganda, rather to reach Uganda. It means you're going to pay taxes in Kenya, and then you pay taxes in Uganda. So that basically that has just remained on papers. Now, maybe I'll ask a question: is why is the implementation? Why is it not being? Why is it not happening despite all these beautiful documents which lie in the headquarters in Arusha? But also, or maybe we could be having the same scenarios with ECOWAS or any other regional regional bloc. But something else I wanted to comment on, which I think we have neglected, and I think this comes in line with the toppest agenda on AU, which is silencing the guns. And I've been this I've been asking myself, they're talking of silencing the guns. In what perspective or in which angle? Who are the people bringing guns, or why are the guns actually being cocked every other day and ready to shoot? And who is facilitating the guns? Which came to this in question. You realize in Africa we don't have any serious military base. You realize most of our African serious soldiers or army men and women have been trained either in Israel. Before they used to train in Libya, but now they go to US, they go to Russia. That's where they are training from. So at least most of them, like the commandos or those who are doing intelligence in various countries, but that keeps us to a wonder that we don't have a serious military base that would hinder any foreign attack in case it was. And this comes with the recent invasion of NATO when it came to Libya, when they were taking out a giant, the son of the soil. You remember how they stopped, they covered our whole airspace, like nobody could fly in or fly out. And two African leaders who were coming to negotiate peace for Gaddafi, they were told not to come. Now I kept imagining, they were warned in case they had tried to touch the surface of Libya, they would have been gunned down. Now you imagine such kind of humiliation where somebody comes in your own home and then he will tell you how to move your foot or to do what. So why can't we focus also on serious military training, actually, on having a military base here in Africa? And then the other thing is education. Like everyone is commenting on education, because I'm afraid that if we keep ignoring education, our children's children will be dealing with the same problem we are dealing with today, because it all came about education or being misinformed, and that's why today we are still struggling. We were miseducated, and history is repeating itself. Being a scholar of history, because remember when the Europeans were coming to Africa, they came exactly in the same way Chinese, or maybe the model is different, but they came the same way. And we have been paying a cost for over 50 past years. And now the Chinese are coming, and we are still folding our hands and looking over. So if education is not tackled or becomes our topest agenda, and this means holding our governments responsible, tight, so that they make it happen. So otherwise, I don't know about you people, but Chinese languages, Mandarin or Chinese language, is being taught in school. Last time I saw a video of pupils as young as 4 years in Nigeria. They are training karate. They are doing Chinese martial arts, and that's all culture. As we all know, learning a new language is having a new soul. When I speak, if I can speak, for example, if I can speak Rwandese, I am mostly likely to behave Rwandese every time there need be, because I can speak their language, which is not mine. So meaning all this bunch of young children or even older people who are learning Chinese, in 20, 15 years down the road, they will be as good as Chinese themselves, and that those are going to be the agents of Chinese colonialism in Africa. I don't know what we can do about that. But the other thing is the credit facilities. I think we have been so humble that we are ignoring the future. Because, look, if we allow our leaders to keep taking these loans, eventually it's us who are going to pay. It's us who are going to It's our children's children who are going to still be paying. And when I say paying, either monetary, which the possibility is very, very narrow, but paying at the cost we have been paying for all this while, of not being independent, of not being anything else apart from everything being on document. But the most painful part of it, if these loans had come and it's incorporated in our economies and our economies are growing big, there could be a possibility or even a mere dream that one day we will be strong enough to pay them back. But look, this money ends in the pockets of a handful of people who have accounts, who have offshore accounts all over the world, and none of us enjoys, but we will be paying that money. So I think it's high time with the youth, the young people, to hold them accountable until they account for that money, or at least they use it for what it's supposed to be used. For now, that will be it. Thank you.
Thank you very
Hello?
much. Thank you very much, Madam Monica, for. I think we should have rather made you the host and presenter because you.
Hello?
Yes. Can you
Hello?
hear us? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Madam Monica,
Yes.
for that insightful and detailed discussion that you brought. So I think, Razak, on this note, we can move on to the next agenda, right?
Yes, certainly.
All right. Thank you very much.
Certainly. I'm all set for that.
Okay. So let me share my screen. And let's get.
Hello?
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Mm,
Yes.
yes, we
Uh-oh.
can see.
Okay. Okay. Then that's good.
I think, yeah, it's PowerPoint here. We can see it clear.
Okay. So today I'm talking on the African free trade, and then as Madam Monica also rightly said, there's free movement here. Eastern African counterparts, they don't need to pay for visa and all that because all these things have now been made easily accessible and available because of the African free movement. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves is how many of our youth-led organizations, or those we call them young entrepreneurs, do they fully understand the importance, the benefit of the free trade? This is a big question we need to ask ourselves and they need to answer. Is there more social campaign put into the free trade? Because before the signing of the agreement, there was a lot of noise in the airwaves, high profile political
Hello?
meetings. But then now, do we even hear about it? Has it become just, okay, we did a few campaign about it, the agreements have been signed, so let's go on with our life. But today, I'm saying that the free trade it is proof of the power of cooperation, partnership, and shared vision. So now let's look at how the free trade benefits the small and medium-sized enterprises. That is our youth. Now, the small and medium-sized enterprises, let's not forget, they are key to the growth of the African continent. They are key to the GDP of the African continent because they account for around 80% of the region's businesses. It is not a multilaterals, no. It is a small and medium-sized enterprises like you and I. It could be sole proprietorship, it could be partnership, it could be limited liability. But then the small and medium-sized enterprises encapsulates all this. But then these businesses usually struggle to penetrate more advanced overseas markets like the EU, but are well positioned to tap into regional export destinations and then can use our regional markets as stepping stones for expanding into overseas markets at a later point. So we need to build the campaign and the message around our young businesses, our young entrepreneurs, to focus on the African continent. They should build their niche here, build their markets here. And when they get there, then it becomes an easy way out for them to export to the overseas, the EU and all the other continents. Because the African market in a whole, it is big. So we need to get them that knowledge that they need to first position and tap into regional export destinations of the 55 African countries. And that is key. Another way in which small and medium-sized enterprises can also benefit from the free trade is making it easier to supply inputs to larger regional companies who then export. Because mind you, all these big conglomerates, there's one thing they cannot do on their own: the raw materials. Who do they depend on? They depend on the farmer who is either in the village, who has about 1,000 acres of land in multiples. So the farmers, the smallholders of land, these people are critical even to the bigger conglomerates. So if we're able to collate all these enterprises, all these businesses, you've got your part to play. We put all this into a pool. Imagine our supply. We can feed larger regional companies. And with the advent of the free trade, free movement, each and everyone can benefit. In some African countries, entrepreneurs also find it difficult to access adequate government support, as well as effective platforms on which they can co-design alongside government. This means what? They lack the environment to thrive. And this has led a lot of entrepreneurs to fold up, or in some cases, where you operate in about 50 member employees. Now it is maybe five. It have been downsized to five. And where they were into formal sectors operating high end, they have been relegated to informal sectors. Why? Because there is no environment for them to thrive. Now, the free trade has come to support that they can now scale up. But there is something we need to know: the consequences. Now, the consequences of failing to address entrepreneurs' concerns locally. For example, if we take Ghana, even how many people of our young businesses have understood fully what the free trade is about? Do they even know? From the day of inception to today, if we run a poll, how many of them have even taken advantage of the free trade? But yet, we say it is in full force. With Ghana being the what? The headquarters of the free trade. How has it benefited us from the day we got that slot till now? Has there been anything? So the consequences of failing to address entrepreneurs' concerns locally will result in failure to access the gains of the free trade. And this will continue to affect the informal sector, making them even more bloated than before. What does the African free trade really mean in concrete terms? If today we are supposed to educate ourselves, it means what? It means African businesses, traders, and consumers will no longer be paying huge tariffs on a large variety of goods that trade between African countries. It means what? If you're supposed to be paying 20% on taxes and tariffs, there is a possibility you are no longer going to pay. And all these things are also on the pipeline. They are being finalized and it will soon be out. Because there are some of the tariffs you need to pay 5%, 10%, 20%, depending on the kind of goods. But in most cases, it is zero. So this is what it means in concrete terms for the free trade. No longer paying tariffs. And what does this mean for businesses? It means you even get to save more on your intertrades. Now, as we said earlier, it means now also that businesses that were constrained by non-tariff barriers, including customs, excessive paperwork, because sometimes when you go to the border, you can be there for 2 hours, 3 hours, because they need to see what kind of goods are you bringing in. Does this conform to a standard? No. So why? Because now the free trade, there's going to be a mechanism through which it is going to remove all such burdens and barriers. And the free trade is also going to put in place standardization. And when I talk about standardization, it means that if in Ghana you need to have 20 kilos of rice in this standardized rubber, it is what Benin is also doing. It is what Nigeria is doing. So standardization simply means that it is the same unit of measure that runs through. If it is pepper, onion, and tomatoes that you need to put in this can, every country is going to go accordingly to this ingredients for that specific can. So once there's standardization and I'm moving a product from Ghana to Nigeria and I get to the border and they see the product sticker, they know exactly what is in it and they don't need to go, okay, does this conform to what food and drugs in Nigeria they need to comply with? Do we need to send a sample to the lab? No, because every protocol has been set to standardize all products and services. So this is what the free trade means in concrete terms. Does the youth know about this? What does it also mean? Customs authorities, yes, as rightly said here, cooperation between custom authorities over product standards and regulations, as well as trade transit and facilitation, will make it easier for goods to flow between African borders. And that is what the free trade is about. What else does it also say? It means what? There's going to be mutual recognition of standards. It means that what Zambia is going to talk about, maybe their bottle of juice has to have this ingredient. Ghana's bottle of juice has to have the same ingredients. There's going to be what? Mutual recognition of standards. And that is what the African free trade is about. Mutual recognition of standards, licensing and certification of service suppliers. This will make it easier for businesses and individuals to satisfy the regulatory requirements of operating in each other's market. And this is what the African free trade means in concrete terms. That our youth, that our young entrepreneurs, that our youth-led organizations and businesses need to be put in the known. The easing of trade between African countries is also going to facilitate the establishment of regional value chains in which inputs are sourced from different African countries to add value before exporting externally. For instance, we always have to import toothpick. I mean, how? We need to import basic amenities from outside. No, because either Ghana cannot produce it or Nigeria do not have the capability or the industry to get it done. But then maybe South Africa has the manpower. They have the technological advancement for that particular product. What does this mean for the other African countries? It means that they can tap into that value chain of South Africa and then make a semi-finished or finished product before they can export. Because if you produce cocoa and you just export the beans, the value you have will never be much more than having that cocoa into a semi-finished product or finished product before exporting. That is value. So this free trade gives what? An ease of trade between the African countries to have a coordination of value chains. This means that they're also able to build on and strengthen their industrialization. And this is how we can add value to products before we export. Hence what? Towards one African market, made in Africa products. Now, to sum it up, to ensure that the private sector, because we know that our youth, our entrepreneurs, the larger chunk are all private sectors. To be in the public sector means to work for the government and to be a representative of the government. So to ensure that the private sector, that is you and I, can benefit from the African free trade area, it is important that business understands what the free trade and future negotiations will cover. So we need more education on the free trade. Business should ensure its voice is heard as governments craft and operationalize the agreement. So each and every time we need to be hitting at the secretariat. What is going on? What is the updates? What is the new policies that have been put in place? We need to be involving. So in order to do that, they need to be fully aware of the situations, potential benefits, opportunities, and most importantly, the role you and I can play in a free trade. Whichever country you are, from Zimbabwe, from Zambia, Tunisia, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, you need to play a role in the free trade in your own country, because it is until then that you will fully understand the issues that are coming up, the potential benefits and opportunities that you can tap into other regional markets. Without that, there is no way this free trade can be meaningful to you and I. So we need to have more talk, more sessions, more stakeholder consultation to understand what exactly goes into the free trade, the ins and outs of it, and how each country can also benefit at the regional level. What is the way forward now to end my submission? The way forward is two things. There has to be a bridge between entrepreneurs and technology, because we can all say that this global crisis has brought up one key area that is saving our lives: technology. So it's therefore important the African entrepreneurs understand the free trade could benefit them and their ventures. As awareness is raised, you and I and all entrepreneurs should begin crafting new trade roadmaps for their businesses, informed by the agreement Because if you do not understand the context of the agreement, how then do you even craft a roadmap for your own business? So we need a people to educate us on the free trade. It is key to our growth. The other is technology. Technology is an integral to the movement of goods and services, especially with the introduction of Pan-African business to business. You need to have an online presence. You need to understand email marketing. You need to understand digital marketing. You need to understand how you can bridge entrepreneur, technology, goods, services. You need to understand all these things in order to make your business flourish. Without it, there is nothing that can help us. Thank you very much.
Very much, Mr. John Aggrey, for the powerful presentation of the African Free Trade Area. I think we learned much about how it operates, how it functions, and how it's supposed to be. Comrades, the floor is open for questions and contributions on the presentation made by Mr. John Aggrey on the African Free Trade Area.
Yes, please, if any question that is thrown to all of us, so anyone who has insights, anyone who has primary information, let us all share so that we all learn from each other. So the floor is open. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me ask my questions. My first question is I just received a message from a young lady who I shared the webinar information with, but she couldn't join. She said, I'm a fishmonger. I supply markets in neighboring African countries such as Togo, Burkina Faso. What is my take in the free trade area? What is my take? What will I benefit from the free trade? Since I'm a fishmonger, I already trade with neighboring African countries such as Togo and Burkina Faso. So what will be the difference since the introduction of the free trade area?
Do we have anyone who can answer the question? Madam Monica, do you want to throw some light on that? Razak, would you want to throw some lights on that?
The question I asked, right?
Yeah,
Hello?
the contact says she's already trading with the some African countries. So with the coming in of the free
Yeah,
trade, what benefit is she getting, and how is that different from what she was already doing?
exactly.
Okay, for me, I will say that it is a little bit inconclusive to give her a full answer, because I also asked, as she's trading with them, was she paying taxes? Was she paying tariffs at the border? Because she would not just enter with the products. Now, what was her waiting period when she's doing her supply? Because at the borders, we've got customs, we've got food and drugs authorities there that they need to be vetting and all that. So if we could have had more information, then we would have been in a better position to answer her. But notwithstanding, if I'm taking it from the context that, okay, she was paying tariffs, Now, with a free trade, she's no longer going to pay huge money as tariffs. Also, with a waiting period, the fish has to be stored at a temperature for a certain period. The waiting period could affect her product if it goes beyond the stipulated time. The free trade makes the processes smoother and faster. So that means that she can even increase her demand and supply. Do you get what I'm saying? Her supply is going to go higher.
That is okay. That is okay.
With the,
So
her quantity, she can increase her
first of
quantity.
all, she should expect. Yes, first of all, I'm saying she should expect a reduction or a waiver in terms of the tariffs that she was paying previously as she crossed the border to other country.
Yes.
So the coming of the free trade will lead to the waiving of tariffs or import duties which she was paying previously. Hello? I think my second question is, hello?
The floor is open. Yes, the floor is open.
Yeah, my second question is, we are all aware that there is an existing trade agreement with African countries, with other countries which are not in Africa, for instance, the USA, UK, China, Britain, France. Yes. So, how would the free trade agreement supersede those existing agreements? For instance, if Ghana has a trade agreement with UK, how would the free trade agreement supersede such particular agreement? For instance, if Ghana decides to still go by the terms of the agreement with UK, meanwhile there is an agreement or there is a free trade agreement. So if Ghana decides to supply UK with cocoa beans, raw material of chocolate and Milo beverages, because of the agreement with UK, and now there is free trade agreement, and another country in Africa, for instance, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda is failing to trade with Ghana in terms of the supply of cocoa beans, how would that agreement, the free trade agreement, supersedes the existing agreement which Ghana has already entered with Britain and or other country?
Okay, thank you very much. Will anyone want to take up the question?
Oh, hello.
Yes. Hello, Emmanuel.
Yeah,
You have the floor.
I hope with what the question that came out, if you read New Colonization by Kwame Nkrumah, he made that strategy specifically clear that before we can be very do well on the market, what we need to do is that we need to have a plan on a continental scale. We shouldn't do that let's say based on states, but on a continental scale. What he meant was that, let's say, what a particular country will be producing will not be produced by another one. That means we will be depending on each other. So if we are going to produce something for USA, I think that that should be captured in such a way that
Hello, are you there?
Yes, we are there, Mr. Emmanuel. We are still waiting for us. I think his network is not helping.
Oh, okay. 'Cause he was making a very good submission. Mr. Emmanuel Bedu, are you there? Okay, will anyone want to add to it whilst we wait for Mr.
Yes, I
Awudu?
think I will add something more to what he was building. I've, I've already argued that the free trade should be our blueprint in terms of trade for all African countries. That particular framework should supersede all initial or existing trade agreement which African countries have with foreign countries, in order not to create some kind of conflicting trade situations. So now we have free trade agreement. If you want to trade with Africa country, for instance, if you are from China, if you are from UK, USA, you must use that particular trade agreement as the guideline, as the framework on which you will negotiate with that particular country. So the union or the free trade area should make sure that all African countries use that particular framework as their yardstick in terms of entering into any bilateral trade agreement with any other foreign country. And also, he was talking about the comparative advantage, whereby you master into what you have most, the resource for what you have most. For instance, if Ghana, we have the raw material of producing enough chocolate or producing enough beverage, because of our cocoa, we must put much emphasis on that particular production, then allow other countries, for instance, such as Tanzania or Congo, on them to produce what they can produce more. That is a comparative advantage he was talking about. So I think that particular idea is also important going forward, and also ensuring that the free trade agreement becomes a success.
Thank you very much, Country Director. Okay, to also add to it, I will say the free trade is not to replace country-specific agreements with overseas counterparts. The free trade is only to bolster our regional, both inter and intra-regional markets as a single market to benefit the African continent. It is not to compete with specific country contracts or agreements, relationship, for example, maybe Ghana and UK. No, the free trade is for us, the African continent, to make sure there is a regional integration, a regional access to the markets of the African countries. So that is to me the basic knowledge of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's well understood.
Do we have any other person to give us another, or before we wrap up, so that we can all go and enjoy the day? Okay.
Hello, Joramu.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yeah, this is Emmanuel. I'm sorry, I got disconnected.
Oh, so sorry.
Yes,
Welcome
Emmanuel, we
back.
can hear you.
Yeah, I was making a submission.
Yes, yes.
I was saying Kwame Nkrumah
Yeah, you can
strategized that.
continue.
Kwame Nkrumah strategized the trade in his book, saying we shouldn't make our trade on state basis or country basis, but it should be on a continental scale. What he meant was that when we should be dependent on each other, so that there wouldn't be excess or there wouldn't be uh, 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 some minuses. What he was saying is, if a country is manufacturing a particular good, there shouldn't be another state trying to do same. The country will try to produce a lot in order to have a wide market, in order to compete with the Western world. So in strategizing that to fit with that of the Western world, the trade we are having with them, we would have to produce more in excess, plan in a way to produce in excess to supply them, to feed ourselves, and to supply them with what they need. That was my submission.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Emmanuel.
Yes, and also to add a little contribution, I think, as you made mention during your presentation, I've learned that the free trade area will enable SMEs to have direct markets across their fellow African countries. For instance, if I'm a farmer, I cultivate tomatoes and I cultivate tomatoes in Ghana, I can have direct access to markets across African countries without much restrictions or much immigration laws. And also, we will have a waiver in terms of payment of tariffs and payment of taxes. So the free trade area, I think, is a very good step which we must all embrace going forward.
Yes, you are very right. You're very right. Do we have any more submissions that anyone would want to share?
See,
Yes.
Eugene, okay. Monica,
Okay. Yeah. Regarding the whole free trade space, it's supposed to even encourage entrepreneurship, because you imagine. I'll give again an example of my region. A couple of years ago, Rwanda gave just an open space for anyone who was willing to invest, and this person was supposed to be uh, rather African, who was willing to invest. And then he gave some free plot of land, and whoever wanted to come and construct a factory, you had to do it. And as we are speaking of now, as we all know, Rwanda doesn't have any real resource, a natural resource. Their biggest resource is a human resource. But right now, as we are speaking, Rwanda benefits like too much from. Initially, that project had been wanted to be taken to Tanzania, but Tanzania held up, and then Kagame decided to take it. But now, thousands of Rwandans, because he put a policy, the experts work, but the majority of people are going to work. The engineers, Rwanda's trained enough engineers who are able to work and process stuff. And today, Rwandans, like thousands of them, have benefited from such a project because of that free trade movement. Now, like companies from Tanzania come and work there. They don't pay taxes. Usually, we know starting a business from another country, it's extremely very hard. Usually it's even hard to start businesses in your own country, but now remember going to a different country, which has been made so easy in Rwanda, and it's supporting the economy of Rwanda big time. So that whole thing is really, really important, the free trade. But also, I have a question towards that. For example, here we have, if the regional blocks and agreements and protocols are not yet implemented, how are we supposed to be hopeful for the larger Africa? Or what is it that as citizens or young people are supposed to do or to engage in to make sure like such protocols are being put to practice? Because being a young person, you want to do business, you want to to break even. It's all still hard. You still have to go through the old system, and yet there are protocols which are supporting that. How do you think the implementation is going to be?
Thank you very much. I think this question, I'm from Ghana. Razak is from Ghana. We've got other participants from our sister brother countries. So why don't we throw it around and find out what exactly their country, have they heard anything about a free trade in their country, and what is the youth involvement or participation in it? Okay, so let's open the floor from those from other African countries, and let's hear from them also. What is the benefit, or what have you in your own way seen about the free trade in your country? I think that would be a great way for us to know the extent to which the youth have benefited or are preparing
Yeah.
themselves to take part in the free trade. So let's trade to everyone. In Kumbi, are you there? Can you speak?
Hello,
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah, Joram, we can hear you.
yes.
good evening, everyone.
Yes. Good evening. Please tell us about your country and the free trade.
This opportunity to thank Brother John Aggrey for the presentation. It is very informative and very educative. I think my contribution to a free trade area and businesses in Africa and entrepreneurship in Africa and doing trade in Africa and commerce is the education that we need very much as young people. Most of the big shops in town and in major cities, they are owned by Indian people and the Chinese people. But very few big shops are owned by Indians or the Tanzanians. So this shows that the education of doing business, commerce, and entrepreneurship is not so much with us. Going forward, I think if we have many expertise, many entrepreneurs in Africa, we should try our level best to have them in our cycles and to begin teaching ourselves and even our younger brothers and sisters in schools. Because if we cannot do business in our own countries, even moving across the border, it will be difficult. If you can't do business in your own country, if you can't use the resources in your own country to do business, how possible then is it going to be doing business in Ghana or in South Africa or in Uganda if within your own country you can't see the opportunities? And maybe the education that we have been receiving in all these years is not very much useful. I'm not complaining, but maybe we need to do something. Why that the Chinese and the Indians, when they come, they create jobs, they own shops and big businesses. And we as Africans, we don't see those opportunities as other people from other civilizations see. We need more commerce and trade education, entrepreneurship education, and this time a practical one. If one entrepreneur who has been in a business, has been running a business for so long, for quite some times, if we can find ways to invite them and having maybe 10 or 5 students or university students around him, and so that the students see practically how business are done, it can be much helpful. But and thereafter, the intercontinental trade will be easy because the entrepreneurship spirit now is alive and well. And the first step of doing business in Africa is by doing business within the borders, within the borders. And by so doing, and another thing also I see as a challenge is the unity of Africa. We are not, we are weak because of that. You may find, for example, in Tanzania, there are some commodities that we import from outside the country, outside the continent, the product which perhaps we could have get them from Kenya or we could have got them from any other African country. If I may remember correctly, you mentioned it, John Aggrey, as you were presenting, that we should only import commodities which are not produced in our own countries. That can only be possible if we are united and we have one say, that this is not supposed to be imported. We must only import the things which are not produced in Africa or in neighboring countries. By having that unity and one voice, then these trade inequalities that we see today will disappear or will be at a negligible level. And also, one thing perhaps also we need to hear more from expertise concerning the border issue and the free trade issues and what are the opportunities and the benefits, because it seems this also is something broad. We need to understand more, and the visa thing, because there are some countries here in Africa, to visit them you have also to pay visa. I've heard Ghana is a visa-free country. If Ghana has managed to do that to other African countries, and other African countries also can learn from Ghana. So my question is, how have you managed to be a visa-free country? And what are the challenges that you have achieved? So
Thank you very much, my
another
brother.
challenge, yeah, I also want to compliment and to thank Brother Razaki for his presentation. And I was very delighted to hear a young man like him speaking with understanding, with the zeal and the determination. I was very much inspired by him, and by this has given me hope that really we are moving into the right direction, and we have young people who will take Africa to the next level. May God bless you all, and I'm very happy to be part of this meeting. Back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that submission. Yes. So, who else? We've got Monica giving her submission. We've got Nkumbi. Do we have another African country representative here? I think. Do we have another African?
I think there are only two, not from Ghana.
Okay, okay. So Razak, would you want to say something on the free trade Ghana?
Yeah, just to wrap up, I think my brother Joram Nkumbi made mention of the trading with other countries directly and neglecting how you also trade with your people in your own country, because before you can move out from your house you must be well equipped. Yes, one thing I've been thinking about recently is the idea of FDI, foreign direct investment. For instance, if someone in India, UK, France observe that the patronage or consumption of chicken in Ghana, in the Ghanaian populace, has increased for the past 5 years, that fellow with much funds, with much resources, will come directly to Ghana to establish a fishing company or a chicken company or chicken factory with more or less relaxed restrictions or relaxed laws, which sometimes gives him the opportunity, the room to expand, and thereby crippling or leading to the collapse of local industries, local people who are also into chicken production. I think it's an area which our government must also consider and have a look at it. The idea of the foreign direct investment. We must learn how to protect our local industries and also how to control import, because these are some of the things that will help us to progress in terms of making the free trade a success, because the free trade is meant for African production, it's meant for African traders, not for foreign direct investment. So we must consider the issue of PIs in our countries as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think everyone have made their submission. Judge Ahen, would you want to have something to say for us on the youth on the African free trade? Madam Sophia,
Hello.
yes, please.
Hello.
Yes, please. We,
Hello.
we,
Yeah,
we we want to hear from you.
I
Okay, let's give the
okay,
floor
go
to
first.
let's go give the floor to Madam Sophia. Then from there, you're coming.
Right. Hello.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I just joined. My network is really messing up over here, so I'm unable to follow through with what we are discussing. But I think the least I caught up with was entrepreneurs and technology, and I would like to talk about that. First of all, in as much as you're talking about free trade and all, entrepreneurs should know that marketing is also equally important. In that using technology is also important, in the sense that when we say technology, it means social media. And I realize that most of the entrepreneurs we have do not use social media at all. And those who use it don't even know how to go about it. So if you don't have that social media presence, they are going to miss out. You were going to benefit from widening your market. So what I want to say is social media, which includes the content, visuals, promotion, discounts, and influencers, influence the buying behavior on consumer. The effects of social media on consumer behavior are not ignored by brand businesses. That's the little I could say. I didn't catch up with what we discussed from beginning, but I'm hoping that I'll get a PowerPoint or something to show it.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, the PowerPoint will be shared through Razak for everyone to have access to it. So don't worry, we will share the PowerPoint after the presentation.
So I can at least get more on.
Yes, please. Okay, George, you have the floor. No, but before then, I think in Kumbi, you had your hand raised. Did you want to make a comment?
She has said it already.
Okay, okay, okay. George, you have
Yeah.
the floor.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to also add my voice. First of all, I would like to thank all the presenters who shared the knowledge with us. It was such an insightful moment. I particularly learned a lot. Um, with regards to the free trade agreement, when Mr. John Aggrey was presenting, I caught a bit, but I had to do something alongside. So I'm hoping that the listen will have the PowerPoint so that I also get a full gist of what went on. But just to add my voice, I would want to advocate and urge all of us to continue to advocate and educate the youth out there to know more about this free trade agreement. Because, well, here in Ghana, for instance, if you meet, let's say, ten Ghanaian youth and you ask them about free African free trade agreement, I'm 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 most optimistic that you get about 6 people not knowing the details, not knowing what it is about. And so for this agreement to go down well and for us to get the maximum benefit as African countries, we need to get our youth to understand what it actually means, what the benefits are, and what we stand to gain from it as Africans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that submission. So anyone else would want to before we close? So I think Razak, you can have your final words, remarks, and then we can close the session.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I read.
Yes,
Okay,
you have the
so
floor.
for
Yes.
me, I think I'm a Ghanaian, and I
Yes.
really think that the youth of today are not so much interested in knowing about Pan-Africanism, about free trade, and whatsoever. All they want to do is sit in office and make big money. So I think that in as much as we talk about free trade and everything, we should look at educating them and make them love what they do, love the culture, love Africa for what Africa is, and develop Africa as a whole. So from that point of view, that we can get the youth to understand the free trade, because most of them have no interest at all in knowing free trade, in knowing Pan-Africanism, in knowing whatever it is. All they want to do is get big money, go their way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that submission. Okay. Any other?
I think Eugene was about to talk before Sophia dropped in.
Okay.
So Eugene,
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. We can hear you.
yes,
Okay. All right. I must say, I must commend all of you for putting this together to get all of us to really learn a lot about the AfCFTA and what it has for Africa. Well, I wouldn't comment much because I joined the meeting very late. The least that I could actually add to everything that has been said are that one, are we ready as a people of the African continent to admit that firstly, we are Africans first before anything else? Now, going forward, the AfCFTA, per what I know and per what I have seen, has got a detailed outline map as to how everything is going to go. The lady who was speaking and then made reference to the fact that there are a number of youth that are not really interested in the development of Africa, are mostly, let's say, engaged in things that are of immediate interest to them, but not particularly or not particularly concerned or interested in what they can do on their own as individuals to help promote the Africa that we actually want. I'm saying this to actually get to the point that there are lots and lots of information out there. And this information actually are with certain specific agencies of government institutions. So for instance, in Ghana, if you come to the Ministry of Trade and Industry, you do have section and you do have individuals who have been tasked to man the African Continental Free Trade Area. You could also go to the Africa Trade House. It's also here in Accra. It's closer to the British Council. And that place has also got lots of information that you could actually use. So it all boils down to the youth being very much interested in the policies that government have set for them. There are a number of policies that have been set by various governments in Africa with particular concern to the youth. But the question is, how ready are we, the youth, to actually learn these policies, imbibe them, and apply them to the things that we really want to do? Now, the AfCFTA itself is to help promote a lot of trade within Africa. But how is this going to happen? The AfCFTA itself is more of a legal framework for Africa to operate as a single trade hub, with Ghana actually hosting it. So for this thing to work particularly, it will, one, fall on the things that we actually need to do as a people. Razak mentioned foreign direct investments. Let me be honest with you. Foreign direct investments are going to come. They are not going to stop. Since we have decided to actually go in for the AfCFTA, now the issue of protectionism is going to be something that is going to be overlooked, because we've opened our borders. All we have to be interested in now is to get prepared for competition, because now we are really going to be competing. Because if I am in Ghana, and for instance, let's say Razak made mention of let's say importing birds into the country, but if you decide to control the importation of birds, do you have a substitution for what you want to control? So that boils down to the point of we actually enhancing the capacities of our local production firms or institutions. Now, there are various means, there are various, let's say, support schemes. But the thing is, we don't know about these things. And the issue is, have we made the effort to actually know these things? That's the first question. So it's more of having to do with we being interested in the things we do. So for instance, if I would want to go into the production of birds, the first thing I would look at is to try and then get information from the Ministry of Agriculture as to how to go about the bird production, as to the incentives that can be given me. Now, if you come to Ghana, there are lots of schemes. People are actually accessing them, and they are getting access to money. I can testify to this. You can go to Maslock. Maslock is an institution that actually do provide incentives to various small-scale businesses. And even now, the government is launching business resource centers in various districts to actually provide business services to people who want to go into, let's say, the establishment of little industries, small businesses, and the likes. So the AfCFTA itself has got lots of opportunities, okay? And it's up to us as a youth, as a people, to know what these things actually entail. I will tell you, there isn't so much problem with Africa, all right? The issue with Africa is the people in Africa. Kwame Nkrumah said Africa is not poor. It is Africans that are poor. Everything we need as Africa is actually here. How can we actually use these things to make the Africa we want? It's simply one, applying our brains. Sorry to say that, I don't mean to say Africans do not apply their brains, but then we applying our brains in the sense of we actually gathering the information that we need. We building the synergies that we actually need. I am in Ghana. I am ready to actually work in someone in Tanzania. I was in Tanzania some time ago and I partnered with an individual to work on something. And I mean, it went very well. So it's up to us as a youth to build synergies. Once we build a synergy, all we need to do next is to actually put in the plan that we actually need to get whatever we want to work. So everything we have said and discussed boils down to we, the people. The question is, are we ready as a people of the African continent to actually get Africa to work? That is the issue. For me, my main interest is not in actually talking about the problems of Africa. Africa have problems. We don't need to be reciting the problems day in and day out. There are solutions to the problems. It's up to us. It's up to me and you to actually start working on the solutions to get Africa to work. So the issue of Africa is Africa is B, Africa is C. And because of that, we need to go to this country for aid. We need to go to that country for support. We need to go to this particular country to come to Africa to help us do what we want. I think it needs to stop now. It actually comes to we, the youth today. We are the next generation now. Are we ready to take up the responsibility? Are we ready to go the extra mile? Are we ready to make Africa really work? That is the new spirit we should be in for us as a people. And finally, I would say we, the current generation, must learn to become generational thinkers so that when we actually get the mantle to do what has been entrusted us, to help ameliorate the living conditions of people, we will do it to the point that when it gets to the time for us to actually retire, the people who are going to come after us are actually going to look at what we did and say, indeed, our forefathers did lay the standard. Our forefathers did lay the foundation, so it's up to us to continue in their path. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for that passionate submission. Any more?
That was very detailed
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Eugene Nima. Very much.
Thank you, Master Eugene. Razak, I think we can wrap up now. And so your final remarks,
Yes.
and then we close.
Yeah. So let me chip in this with a short introduction. Since when we were introducing the participants, they were not available. So Eugene Mapo is the head of Greater Accra region of the PLO Foundation Ghana chapter, and also Sophia Celestina is the deputy head of Pan-Africanism of the Ghana chapter. Emmanuel Bedu Hope is the head of Ashanti region. Yeah, as well as Joram Minkumbi, Monica Kayesu are the country directors for Tanzania and Uganda respectively. And Ajini George, Kojo, Nunu, I think they also join us to contribute their quota. So, comrades, in short, on behalf of the foundation, I want to express my profound gratitude for your time and also your contribution this afternoon. As Eugene said, it is up to us, the youth of Africa, to utilize the opportunities that has been presented by the African Free Trade Area. So we assure you that we will try to make this conversation a regular one. We have learned so much from this conversation. And also, lastly, we express our profound gratitude to our head of programs and projects, Mr. John Aggrey. And he is also the CEO and founder of the Harriet Consult. We thank you for hosting us for today's edition of the 25th May Africa Day anniversary. Thank you very much, comrades, for attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my boss, Razak, for this session. You were actually the brain behind, and then we here supported you. And I want to thank everyone who has made it here, from Madam Monica to Inkumbi, to Madam Sophia, to Eugene, Kojo, George, and to the others, Bedu. I want to say a big thank you for taking time and especially your data to be here for us to discuss issues concerning us, the youth, the African Day, and the free trade. Let's do this another time again for more decisive consultation and discussion. So I wish you all the best, and wish you a happy celebration for today and beyond. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you too.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.